Alright folks, and welcome back to a person looking at cards that this time I think are bad, which is why we have red light in the background to signify that red is bad and green is good. So after looking at all the cards and selecting the best ones yesterday and the best design cards tomorrow, we have the top 10 worst cards on this expansion according to me. Keep in mind, I'm some random dude on the internet, everything I say could be wrong. Probably is wrong. I'm never wrong, what am I talking about? Everything I say is right. So first card, Barrens Blacksmith. This card sucks. Here is why. It's a frenzy card that buffs your minions by +2/+2. Meaning it's basically the kobold guy that buffs your minions by +2/+2, but it has to survive damage. And because you can't charge this card into something, you can only rush it into something if you have the broomstick. This card is a 4-mana 3/5. Even worse, it's a 5-mana 3/5. So your opponent could just be like, hey, I kill your minions first, and then I destroy that, and then this card has no effect. I think this card in most cases has no effect and is pretty useless. Keep in mind, I look at this from a wild player's point of view. And in wild, this card will never see play. And for that, it's the first thing on my list of the worst cards. Then we get the BBA, the Burning Blade Acolyte. By the way, I might be really wrong here, but I think this card sucks hard because you don't want to spend 5 mana to summon that. There's this one card called, I think, Faceless Summoner, or some other word, it's on screen, and that card never saw play. Technically, you could play it in Death Rattle Hunter, where you then target that using Play Dead, maybe Feign Death or 9 lives and to get a big minion, but in reality, it just doesn't see play. And I think this card is just the same card, but better. But still bad. Know what I mean? Like obviously summon a 5/8 with Taunt, it's a good effect, at least they don't die immediately. But at the same time, you summon a 1/1, and unless you give it Rush or Charge, then your opponent has to trade into that for it to have any effect. Which means the moment you play that, this card doesn't do anything. And that's the problem when it comes to funny cards, because when you play them and nothing happens, you're kinda dying. I think I will try this card out in Death Rattle Hunter just to see if it's going to be fun or at least good, but I'm really uncertain about this one. I think it's either going to suck hard or be a decent card. Probably bad. Then, and I will have this card again tomorrow in my best design cards video, Celestial Alignment. This card is bad. It's hard to say anything else about that. But for 7 mana, you reduce every player to 0 mana, and then, you know, you have cards that cost 1 mana in your deck, hand, wherever. Now, this card would be good if you play big minions, so if you used to play something like Astral Communion Druid and you want to play big stuff, this is kind of that, but different. The moment you play this card, you have no mana. So either you have a coin, Innervate Lightning Bloom, or your turn is over, giving your opponent a head start. So unless you're already winning on the board, you just give your opponent the initiative to play stuff. And then you play something and then can play 2 things, and then it's like 3-1, and then you try to catch up and then you lose. For meme decks, great. Reality, pretty bad. However, the artwork is insane. I will probably craft this card in Golden or North America, where I never craft stuff in Golden, just because it looks so sick. I really hope the Golden artwork looks as good as I imagine, but the basic artwork? Mwah. Chef's kiss. Then, despite having 2 watch post towers in the last video, I think the Crossroads watch post, that's really hard to say, sucks hard. So when you play this minion, nothing happens. And the bad thing is this can't attack. It doesn't do anything. And if your opponent just has minions, or they remove all the other minions you happen to have on the board, then this thing has no effect. Even if they cast a spell and you don't control any other minions, then it only buffs itself, but it can't attack, which makes it really bad. I think for the watch post, the 2 I talked about yesterday, they're good. This thing sucks. Too slow, doesn't do much once you play. Then we do have a Grim Patron, and now we have the Overkill Patron, which sucks. And then we have Gruntled Patron, which is Patron but Frenzy. So it's basically Grim Patron, and I assume you're going to summon a 3/3, because it doesn't say with as much health remaining as this card has. But Grim Patron doesn't see play for the past 5 years. This card won't see play. But it's a nice attempt, because we could play Patron Warrior. We could play all 3 Patrons, use a bunch of Whirlwind effects, and maybe the opponent, you know, can't deal with the 3/3 minions, or the 3/1s, or 3/2s, because they get damaged. If we had this card like 5 years ago, might be good. In reality, right now, no. Patron is dead, and we killed it. It's bad. Next, despite my name being Solem, I put in the Golem Shaper, Kazakis. This card is so bad, I don't even know why they made that. If it would read, if your deck contains no duplicates, you get the effect? Maybe. But all you do is you get a minion with the effect that is like draw a card or whatever, which is just not good because it doesn't impact the board at all. And your deck has to have no 4-cost cards. That is so bad. Remember the 3 Princess? We had Killer Seth, really good. You can play it on turn 1 or 2 if you have the coin. Buff your entire deck, easy. Taldaram, Cube Warlock, summon a copy of something that's really good. Valinir, card never saw play, complete garbage. That's the same thing. That is Prince Valinir in the current year. And because of that, I think I won't even craft this card. Also, if you play a Reno deck, which is, I think, Hunter, Mage, Priest, Warlock, maybe Shaman, but unlikely, you always play 4-cost cards. always. So this card won't be active unless your deck is empty, which then means the golem you summon either has a giant impact or this card is pretty useless. And this card is pretty useless. I hope they change the effect to just not having duplicates. Then we got Plaguemaw the Rotting. While I do like the artwork and I like all the undead themed cards, I even bought myself recently this Yu-Gi-Oh card in PSA 10 Greater because I only collect 10s. I have to say I would like to rate this card better. Great artwork, but it's so bad. You summon a 3-drop for 4 mana, which technically has a really good effect. If you play Taunt Druid and the Taunt minions die, you resurrect them without Taunt, but you resurrect the minions, so it's like a mini Kel'Thuzad. In reality, everybody can deal 4 damage easily to that minion and just remove it. So unless you already have multiple top minions on the board and you'd play this and then trade into something, which is like a scenario that doesn't really happen that often, this card is pretty bad. Also, what exactly do you gain when you resummon a taunt minion and then it doesn't have taunt? Like you play it to either resurrect that later on using Heteronox on his Oath, or to restore like 6 health if you play card to Defender. So all this card would do is you summon stats that heal you. And that seems pretty useless. I wish this card would be better because the artwork is sick, but it's so bad. I think this card and Taunt Druid in general is not going to see play. But it's probably going to be a fun archetype, which I will test. Then, and that is unsurprising, Power Word Fortitude. It's an 8-mana spell that gives a minion +3/+5. This card is bad for the exact same reason, but I think that Nostormu is going to be bad. And let me explain 2 scenarios so you can understand where I'm coming from. If you play Nostormu, and you hope your opponent also plays Nostormu so you don't rope, and you only have 15 seconds per turn, then that would imply that you wouldn't rope in the first place and the opponent also wouldn't rope, meaning the card is useless. And if you play against somebody who does rope and just wastes time, they wouldn't play Nostormu, making the card literally useless. If you play Power Word Fortitude to cast that spell on a minion, you need to have a bunch of spells in your hand, so this card is actually useful. If this card will cost like 3 to 4 mana, it's good, anything less is really good. But for that you need to have like up to 6 spells in your hand and more. Meaning you probably don't have minions on the board. If you don't have minions on the board, you can't target anything, making this card useless. On top of that, if you happen to play Big Priest where you have like 4 minions and 26 spells, then your hand might be full of spells, but you don't win in Big Priest by buffing a minion, you win by playing cards that just resurrect stuff over and over. Making this card again pretty useless. Also it starts at 8 mana, why not a 6? Or like 5, so you can play it in normal decks. This card is pretty bad. Next, another buff, and that is for Druid. Pride's Fury. 4 mana give you minions +1/+3. I was watching Dekkster's review video for like a minute, and he talked about this card and said that it's going to be a 4-star card and it's going to be really good, like Arbor Up. And at least for Wild, I have to hard disagree on that. I think this card is complete garbage. Think about it this way, if you can play Mark of the Lotus for 1 mana and buff your entire board by +1/+1, do you want to spend 3 more mana to get them +2 health? Probably not. And just with that comparison alone, I think this card is just bad. Obviously, if you happen to play against, let's say, Secret Mage and they have something like Flame Ward or Arcane Flag Mage, then you would rather have more health on your minion than attack. And then this card might be useful, but for 4 mana, this seems pretty bad. Usually I do like buff spells, but this one doesn't do it. And for the last card, and it's not necessarily this one card, but the entire category, we have those Caravans. While I do like the music of Caravan Palace, I think all the Caravans in Hearthstone, they're bad. If you play this card, and your opponent has a minion, they kill this minion for free and you lose temper. Then, it doesn't do anything at the end of your turn, it has to survive for an entire turn and then it gets you something. Which, if you think about it, is pretty hard to accomplish, especially in Wild. So when this card is dropped on like turn 1 or 2, this might give you like 1 card added to your hand, and then you still have a 1/3 minion you spend 2 mana on. I think all those Caravans, the idea is alright, but it should be at the end of your turn. It just should be the very end of your turn, not the beginning. The beginning is really bad. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about the best designed cards in the set, in my opinion, when it comes to having fun. If you would like to see my opinion on the best cards in the set, over here. And the expansion showdown, over here. And until then, take care.